we had a discussion about NPS,
Yeah.
and I would like to get into it. But before that, I would like you to introduce yourself first and what do you do? What have you done so far to the
Sure.
audience?
Well, first off, yeah, thanks for having me on. Always enjoy talking about these topics. So, yeah, my background about 15 years on the B2C side. I did a startup right out of college, sold that, had a couple more exits for large media companies, and then went over to the B2B side. And so I had joined Salesforce a little early in their career, led up all the online marketing teams there, then went to Zendesk as their CMO, took them through an IPO. And then to Slack as their CMO CRO and took them through an eventual IPO and acquisition as well. And so now I serve as an advisor to fast growing startups in the B2B SaaS space or the AI space. It's something I love, kind of helping them out with their growth models, helping them grow faster and just helping wherever I can. And I had also launched SaaSCMOPro.com. So that's a site where I've made all these videos on a lot of the topics we're going to talk about today on NPS, on freemium, pricing and packaging, product led growth, high velocity, building brands, attribution, just all the stuff. If you like growth for these types of companies, I've got usually a topic for you. It's totally free. So you can go to the site, sign up, and you can have access to all the videos.
Perfect. I'll link up those channels on my description or wherever in YouTube or LinkedIn this is posted so that people can go
Cool.
there and check out your stuff. Perfect. So we were discussing about NPS. So what is NPS firstly, and why is it important for startups and companies of today?
Yeah. So first, let me come out and say I'm a big NPS fan. I am an NPS nerd, a geek. I love it. I think it's one of the best metrics you can track. So what NPS is it is it's usually a business metric, and it just asks a simple
Sorry to
question.
cut you off. The NPS full form is Net Promoter Score for anyone who
Yes.
is listening. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So it's Net Promoter Score. It's a really simple one question survey. It literally asks how likely are you to recommend whatever company you're talking about, so Slack, for instance, to a friend or colleague. And they give you a score of 1 through 10. And the great thing about it is it's a really good indicator for your word of mouth growth. It's a good indicator for the experience that someone's having with your company. It's a good indicator, how likely are they going to stay with you and expand versus how likely are they going to attrit and leave you. Um, the other really cool thing too is it's very benchmarkable. Since this is like the question is always worded the same and it's always has the same 1 through 10 scale, you can see really quickly how you're doing relative to your industry, to other peers, just because so many companies use this and a lot of that data is publicly available. So it's something I've always embraced. I think there's a lot of different playbooks you can use from it too about finding who loves you the most and tapping into that evangelism. But at the base of it, it's a really simple question and you send it out to your customers and you get some actionable feedback.
Okay. So basically, this is like sort of doing a survey with your
Yes.
customers to figure out like how likely are they to recommend you to others, right? So let's say there's a SaaS company out there and they want to figure out like what their NPS is, how likely their customers are to recommend them, right? How do they actionably do this?
Yeah, sure. So you can go a couple routes, right? Like some companies I've worked with love to build everything themselves. You can build your own little survey, methodology, or there's a lot of companies out there that just specialize in getting NPS scores. So Delighted is one. There's several ones out there. And the choices are you can either have this survey kind of delivered via your software itself. So
Okay.
as someone's using the software, it'll literally just pop up like, hey, how likely are you to recommend this piece of software to your friend or colleague, 1 through 10? Or what some other people will do is they will deliver it via email, right? They'll just have it as an email that goes out to their existing customers. Um, there's a lot of nuances too in how often you run it, right? So ideally, you don't want to, I never like spamming people too much. So ideally, maybe once a year, they get asked if they want to fill this out. And you don't have to send it out to everyone, right? Like ideally, you
Yeah.
would send it out to a statistically significant amount. So if you have 1 million users, maybe you only need to send it out to like 500 or 1,000, to get that amount of data to get the score. But it's important to track it over time, though, too. So it's important to track it, I think, like every month. So you kind of know where your score is trending. Are you getting better or are you getting worse? The last thing I'll say about too is you can add an optional why question. So, hey,
Okay.
why did you score us a 10 and that you love us? Or, hey, why did you score us a 1 and that you hate us? Like that info is really good, I mean, there's a very simple product strategy, which is, do more of the stuff they like, do less of the stuff they don't like. And, generally you're going to start trending in the right direction.
Yeah, perfect. So we actually discussed this on our chat as well, that NP is a company-wide metric, right? So it's not
Yes.
related to maybe product or marketing. It's like a company-wide metric. It shows like how much people enjoy using your product, like your maybe marketing as well. So the promises that you made during marketing should be fulfilled by your product, right? That's the whole thing, and that's why NPS exists. So I wanted to ask you, you wanted to add something?
Oh yeah, I was just going to agree with that, and actually add on to that, where I think sometimes NPS is misused.
Okay.
Some companies will give it to just one team and say, "Hey, you own this, and you're the only one that controls it." I mean, I've seen it given to the marketing team, sometimes even given to the support team, right? And NPS, if you're trying to get a read on what the experience is like at a specific stage of their life cycle, like you're just trying to
Mm,
get a read for, did they have a good support experience, or did they have a good onboarding experience, or did they have a good sales experience? It's not a good question for that.
okay.
NPS is really about the totality, right? Like a brand, at the end of the day, is the sum of all these little experiences that someone has with you. So I would
Okay.
just say, like, make sure you're using it in the right way, right? Use it for an overall type view of what is the experience they're having with your company, with your software, with your product, whatever you're selling.
Okay, perfect. So I wanted to ask you, since I come from a marketing background, you have been a CMO for Slack and other companies. I wanted to ask
Yeah,
you, what what is something that marketing can do which would move the needle for MPS? Like, what can marketing specifically do in
yeah.
an actionable way?
So I come from, most recently the B2B software space, right? And I've
Mm,
bought a lot of software. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes when you buy software, it's not a good experience, right? Like,
mm,
how many times have you heard about a new product or software? You go to their website, and in order to find out anything about it, you have to fill out a giant form, right? You have to
mm,
give like your name and your cell phone number and your email. And then immediately, like, you're called, like, hey, are you ready to buy? You're ready to buy? You're ready to buy? Even if you do eventually buy it, you'll have 5 salespeople trying to get you to buy it. And then when you do buy it, everyone runs away, and you're assigned like this sliver of a customer success person who's also managing 10,000 other accounts.
mm,
When you have trouble, and you try to find the support link, it's hidden, it's buried, you can't get like, help there. It's just, I think a lot of times, with not even just within marketing, but within sales, success support, all these customer facing teams, we sometimes deliver really bad experiences. And I think a lot of that gets back to, teams, in my experience, especially with B2B, they optimize towards very short term metrics. They optimize to just, hey, how many leads did we get? How much closed business do we have? Support is optimized on how little they spend, right? Success is spread too thin, or success is just another word for salespeople, right? They just try to sell you more. So I do think, like, marketing in particular, you have to think about, hey, well, just what are the experiences are we giving them? Should we be gating all of our content? Should
mm,
we maybe we should think about how fast our website loads up. Maybe it takes 5 seconds. That's a pretty bad experience, right?
yeah.
I also think too, marketing has a great role in improving the experience in the product, right? So
Mm,
marketers are good at, we're creative, we're good at conversion rate optimization. So a lot of things we would do at Slack, for instance, is we would go into that onboarding flow, and marketers would go in there and we go, hey, how can we make this simpler? Right? How can we increase the time to value? How can we eliminate some steps that we don't need, right?
mm,
Marketing would go into the product and the software, and we would rewrite all the dialogue, right? Because a lot of times in the software, it's the backend developer who writes a lot of this text, the
yeah.
copy that you read.
Agreed.
And it's very, like, sterile, and, click next to activate feature XYZ,
It's very
and
direct.
it's, yeah, right. It's like we tried to just make that fun. We had one of our best people marketing who was really good, that created a very unique tone and voice. It was fun. It was whimsical. We had to rewrite that. I've also seen where marketing can make an impact is, a lot of times when you go to the software company's website, it'll actually look pretty colorful and vibrant and emotional, but then you'll get dropped into the software again, and it's all white background, black text, And so I think, like, marketing can come in and help with that, infuse some color into that website, right? Sorry, into the actual software, right?
Mm,
And have a unique tone and voice. Also make some delightful moments, right? Like, I love software when they make me smile, right? Like, I like using, or I've used Carta for a lot of the companies I advise. They do stock options and management. And when you get a grant, they do a little like confetti and fireworks, right? It's a nice little touch, right? And for a lot of people, that's their first stock grant. That's a big deal. And they kind of celebrate it, as a nice, delightful moment. So I think there's opportunities all over for marketing to create these better experiences. But historically, if you weren't tracking Net Promoter Score, there was no reason to do it, right? You would just be like,
Mm,
well, I just need more leads. Like, what can I do to kind of
exactly.
ring out those leads? Even if it's a bad experience, I'm still going to do it.
Yeah, yeah. So judged by their marketing quality leads, and sales was just on SQL leads, right? So they were focused on just getting leads so that people would purchase at the end of the day. But having a
Yes.
delightful experience should be a role that every department should embrace together. And if they work together, then they can create these experiences for these customers.
Word. Yes. Agreed.
Perfect. Perfect. So, since you come from a SaaS background for the most part, but I would still like to talk about local businesses, like let's say
Yep.
a gym business or a dental clinic, right? So these businesses can also create these experiences and can probably also calculate this NPS. Not maybe saying it's an NPS, maybe doing some kind of survey or like uh, understanding on the field, like what kind of experiences their customers are having, their members are having, if it's a gym. How can they do that according to you? Like how can they create that
Yeah.
kind of experience with it?
So I think the great thing is, hey, this doesn't just apply to software. This is any business, right? And really,
Exactly.
is your viewpoint very short term or is it long term? Right? If you have a more long-term outlook and you want to give people great experiences, what I found is, they tend to recommend you more, they tend to buy more, they tend to attrit less. Like all the business metrics go in the right direction. But as you said, though, a lot of like companies like, well, how do I do this? Or I'm just a small gym, how would I do this? So I would say in that case, what I've seen some really good examples of it is you could ask, or sometimes they'll literally have there's a product that's like literally physical buttons, right? You go like, hey, when they're leaving the gym, it's like, hey, there's a little sign that says, hey, how was your visit today, right? And it's like, smiley face or unhappy face, right? And that's kind of a good one because that's going to encompass everything about that visit to the gym, right? Like, hey, how was the air temperature? Was all the equipment wiped down? Was it clean? Did they have access to what they wanted to? The music. I mean, there's all these factors that go into it, right? So I think that's a way you could do it. You could ask them via email, right? Like maybe you send them a text message, right? Like after they leave the gym or somehow there's a check-in process and a little dialogue pops up or something like, hey, how was your visit today, right? Um, and even though that question isn't as standard, what you'll find is you get a benchmark, right? Like, hey, how was your visit today? How many people gave you a smiley face versus an unhappy face, right? So say you got 38% happy face, right? Okay, well let's set a goal internally, right? Hey, everyone that's working at the gym, if we can get that up to 70%, we all get a bonus this month or something like that, right? Or maybe you start to judge your manager based on that, right? Like, hey, you judge everyone based on that and you ask them questions. How are you going to improve the experience, right? And now they're thinking like, okay, well, what about the temperature? Do we have enough of the right equipment? Are we wiping it down? Is it clean? Is it the music? Like, how's the ambiance? Like, just all that type of stuff, right? They start thinking about that more.
Mm,
And I think like just having people when you can make that shift to be a little more customer centric and start to track these metrics, whether it's net promoter score or that would be called like a CSAT, customer satisfaction type score, you can really start to see the turnaround where now you start to have a customer centric company. People are having better experiences. They're talking about it more. Now, all of a sudden, you don't need to spend a ton on marketing, right? You can lower those expenses there. Maybe you use that money to give better experiences, right? And it creates this great flywheel.
perfect. So you were also SVP of Salesforce, right?
Yes.
So you mentioned that and on your LinkedIn, I've seen that you mentioned you created a lead generation machine. So I also wanted to touch into that. Like, if there's a SaaS business out there or any kind of startup out there, and they want to start getting leads, like that's a huge problem for a lot of businesses who are just starting out, right? What can
Yeah.
they do to start getting their initial leads?
Yeah, sure. So I would say this in marketing, you have a lot of options to create leads, and some of them are very expensive. and some of them are in the middle, and some of them are very less expensive, right? And so, like, when I like to think about it, within marketing, you can go, hey, we're going to do a lot of paid advertising, right? We're going to do
Mm.
billboards, TV ads, online ads. Those are great. Those will get you leads. They're going to cost, they're kind of expensive, right? You could run events, right? They're going to generate leads. They're kind of expensive. They also very people intensive too. It takes a lot of time and energy to run events. Not saying you shouldn't do these things, but just saying, hey, they are kind of expensive. Then you have that's what I kind of call outbound marketing. Now, inbound marketing is more where you're kind of creating a magnet and people are coming to you. So this is things like content marketing, search engine optimization, PR, comms, earned media. It's this idea of like people are coming to you, you're attracting them, right? You still have to create that content, you still have to do the PR, but it's a little bit more manageable. And then you have, stuff like product-led growth, right? And I'm a big believer in that. And so that can mean anything from, having a freemium model where people can come and check out your software for free, right? That can mean focusing on them having a really good experience, right? Like we just talked about. If they have a good experience, they're going to go on, become a marketer for you and recommend you, right? Like I always like to say at Slack, we had 1 million free users, and at Salesforce, we had a ton of people on our free trial. Those were essentially like marketers that we just hired, right? For free, because they would use it and go talk to other people about it, right? So you have that. You have things like virality loops, right? Where when, they use the software, maybe you encourage them to go recommend it to someone else or to invite someone else. So I would just say, like, you have a lot of different options on how you can generate leads. I think the paid advertising is probably the easiest, right? You work with a Google or a Facebook or TikTok or whoever, right? And you have an ad and they just send it out to a lot of people and you target it and you get it back. But I think over the long run, you do want to think about like, hey, how do we create scalable growth that is capital efficient, right? That doesn't cost a huge amount, because that's going to really allow your business to grow faster and make sure you're making a profit at the end of the day.
Agreed, agreed. So basically, what you're trying to say is there are like three options, there are three buckets, the most expensive one, and there are some cheap options as well to get leads. By cheap, I don't mean they are
Yeah.
bad quality leads, but
Capital
those are
efficient.
affordable.
Maybe that's the better word.
Yeah, that's a better word. Capital efficient leads, basically. So I like your entire philosophy around product led growth. I've read some of your stuff around that as well on your
Nice.
platform.
Thanks.
So yeah, so I completely agree with that. So how can someone do that? Like, is it related to NPS that we have already talked about, or is it something else that they can add on to? Because I think those kind of leads that it would generate product led growth, which is basically tied up to word of mouth, right? People recommending your product to someone else. How would they do that?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say is go to ex-CMO Pro and watch some of the videos on it. So I literally did it. I'm going to be doing a series of 26 videos on product-led growth. So SAASCMOpro.com. I think I've released about 5. I've released the, what is product-led growth. I just released a video on freemium and, how that works, what to do. I released a video on credits, on, and the right PLG type metrics. So, each one of those videos is maybe, 10 minutes to 30 minutes long, and it walks you through everything. But, at a high level, product-led growth is this idea that people are spending less time on your website, spending less time talking to your salespeople, but they're spending more time in your software itself. And the idea behind product-led growth is you say, hey, how do we give them a great experience in the product, but also how do we infuse our sales into the product, our
Mm,
marketing into the product, our support into the product, our success into the product? So that comes out with things like high velocity buying, right? That's a fancy way of saying, hey, you could buy the software from within the software, right? It's like, oh, I want to buy it. It costs this much per month. I'm going to add my credit card. We're good to go. That sounds
mm,
simple, right? Like if you're a consumer, you're like, it's just buying something online. What's the big deal? Well, if you were selling software in the past, a lot of times they wouldn't allow that. You had to talk to a salesperson. And some people like
mm,
that. Some people don't like that, right? So you have self-service buying. Like I mentioned before, you have a freemium option, right? You maybe have some paid plans, but maybe there's a plan where they can go in there and start getting value, right?
mm,
Um, with PLG, you look at a lot like time to value. So that's kind of a metric that looks at, hey, literally how many clicks did it take before you got your first aha moment, right? You're like, oh, this is
mm,
great, or you got something really good out of the software. I worked with a company where that was 3 months, right? That's a long time, right? That's a
Yeah,
lot of pain you have to put in before you get that little output. So, PLG is a lot of things, right? It's this basic idea of, again, you're trying to make your software more fun, more simple, a better experience. You're creating virality loops. You're allowing people to buy within the product. There's a lot of different components to it, but if you want to get into that, I would recommend, like I said, watch those videos or just read up on it. Product-led growth. There's a lot of good sources out there, and they'll kind of help guide you through, how you would implement a motion like that.
perfect. So I have seen some of your videos, seen a lot of your content. So anyone listening to this, definitely go to saascmopro.com, check out his content, check out his videos. You would get ton of value out of it. And you would understand like how you can create a product, create experiences so that you can get more leads, you can get more customers, and customers are happy with your product in the end. So I would definitely recommend anyone to go to his website.
Good deal. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I had these questions and I really wanted to ask you them specifically around word of mouth because I come from a background about lead generation, lead generation, lead generation. And that's why I had to add that last question as well about how to generate leads.
I I like it. Look, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with focusing on leads and even
Of
using paid
course.
services, right? Like paid
Of
services
course.
allow you to be very targeted and get those leads flowing. I just think in the long run, you really want to have a balanced approach and you want to think about, hey, are we just spending really expensive and maybe giving people bad experience and those people just keep churning and leaving, right? So it's a fun conversation. I think like, these customer centric lenses, whether it's product like growth, NPS, CSAT, you know, ultimately, like it's a little bit harder to do those because you have to kind of commit to the long run. But when you do, oh my God, it works so well. So yeah, excited to chat with you today. And again, thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Bill. Nice talking to you. Maybe we can do this some other time when I want to talk to you and you have some free time as well about some other topic
Yeah,
as
no
well.
worries. I love talking about this stuff. Hey, happy to do it anytime.
Me too. Me too. Thank you. Thank you, Bill, for doing this.
All right, thanks.